Welcome back to the Midday News. The new president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Sonja Harrison, is challenging Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness's continued comparison of Jamaica's education system with Singapore's. Ms. Harrison was speaking at the 62nd JTA Conference now underway in Trelawny. More in this report. A year ago, the Jamaica Teachers Association made the trek to Singapore to take a closer look at what drives the country's highly regarded education system. JTA President Sonja Harrison says the association funded the visit to study Singapore's approach and identify lessons that could benefit Jamaica.
We were told that, like other government officials, they were compensated in such a manner that retention was not a huge challenge, nor was corruption. One of the first actions of Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, a former Minister of Education, responsible for creating the nation he desired, was to invest in the only and most important resource they had, its people.
Ms. Harrison says while Singapore has a strong education system, it also commits significant resources to education. She points to the country's much stronger economic base compared with Jamaica.
Our percentage rate is a lot more, yes? But when you look at the dollar-to-dollar figure, why the difference? Or what we have as gross domestic product vis-a-vis what Singapore has, they expend more, or it works out to more money any way you take it because of their gross domestic product. So why do we consistently compare ourselves when it is that kind of backing is not forthcoming to the Jamaican education system?
The JTA president says Jamaica cannot reasonably be expected to produce Singapore-level education outcomes without comparable investment and support. She's calling for a more realistic comparison with Jamaica's education challenges considered against the resources available and the level of investment in its schools.
The innovative solutions they produce as a country today, driving their GDP, resides in their human capital. Jamaica seems to be the only country that desires a return on its investment in education without first making the actual investment. Malava 2025.
The Jamaica Labour Party is defending last week's demolitions in Cooper's Pen, Trelawny as the PNP questions their legality. The matter is now before the courts, with residents challenging the action. Opposition Land and Works spokesman Lothan Cousins is demanding the court order used for the pre-dawn exercise. But JLP spokesman Senator Marlon Morgan accuses the PNP of political posturing.
The opposition PNP sought to blame the government. Then it emerged that there is no basis to do so, as it was private owners of the property who had solicited help from the authorities, including the police, to enforce their property rights, which was affirmed several times over by the Jamaican courts. The PNP on Monday sought to advance the view that the court order upon which the private owners acted had expired. That has also emerged to be a blatant lie.
The PNP has cited demolitions under the JLP government, including in West Albion, Stokes Hall, Mount Oliver and Cooper's Pen. Mr. Morgan, however, says the PNP carried out similar exercises while in government.
Had described their attempts to seize the land of a black landowner as iniquitous, insincere, and an attempt to pervert the course of justice and an exploitation of people who the court found they sought to treat as gullible. The court also surmised that the PNP housing minister at the time, as well as other officials of the then PNP administration, targeted the private landowner because he is not of the traditional colonial land ownership class in Jamaica and recommended that they emancipate their minds from enslavement and not breach the rightful owners' constitutional rights.
Mr. Morgan says the dispute should spur non-partisan discussion on Jamaica's land and housing challenges. Farmers in St. Elizabeth are battling pests and fungal diseases as prolonged drought threatens crop production. Pedro Plains farmer Junior Ebanks says the dry conditions are worsening pest problems and limiting water for irrigation.
We see dry condition fungus powder mildew, and then we see a lot of pests like thrips, mites attacking the sweet pepper, the cucurbits, and it's very difficult to control them because the surrounding is dry. The only green area you have is where it's irrigated. That's the crop. So you spray, they migrate. Who can migrate before you spray, and then they return days after and start feeding again because there's nowhere else for them to feed than on the plants, which is getting the little water.
Mr. Ebanks warns the lack of irrigation could lead to shortages of some crops.
Because it's the realities out there. We have farmers who plant an acre, for example, sweet peppers, who would normally yield 20,000 pounds. They can't yield 2,000 pounds now.
What?
Hot pepper is the same. Because of the heat stress, what happens when the heat stress take the plant, they tend to abort the flower, and the flower have to move from flower stage to fruit set for you to get a fruit that you can harvest to sell to market. So because of that condition, what you have is more abortion of fruits and flower. So you have less yield because of the heat stress and the lack of water, sufficient water to irrigate.
And it's now time for the Business Minute.
Consolidated Bakeries, the maker of national and other baked products, is reporting higher revenue for the first 6 months of the year, despite a weaker performance in the second quarter. Revenue for the 6 months ended June 30 increased by 7.5% to $975.7 million. However, second quarter revenue fell by 2.7% to $402.8 million. Net profit for the 6 months fell by 26.2% to $18.9 million. Looking ahead, the company says it has approved a capital expenditure program that will be implemented over the next 18 months. Further afield, Amazon Prime is expanding its air drone delivery service. The online retail giant says nearly 500 cities and towns should have the service by the end of the year. Right now, less than 100 cities are serviced. Items have to be 5 pounds or less and fit inside a large shoebox that can be delivered by drone. Amazon says more than 60% of its items ordered by customers fit into that category. The company says orders can arrive in as fast as 30 minutes, with most within 60 minutes after checkout. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Halshane Burke.
Thank you, Halshane. Now let's take a look at what's ahead in this evening's health report.
In this evening's health report, we take a closer look at epilepsy.
What is seen most commonly is a generalized seizure, where an individual suddenly falls to the ground and has shaking or jerking movements of both sides of the body. And it can last for a varied duration of time, 1 to 5 minutes most commonly.
That's the only symptom?
No, in other forms, you can have a sudden onset of a staring spell, where the individual loses track of a period of time. In other instances, you can have a sudden, intense, gripping fear, which is oftentimes misdiagnosed as panic attacks, or at times a rising sensation in the stomach, which can be misdiagnosed as stomach-related issues.
That's the health report in Primetime News at 7. And now here are a few healthy living tips. Stay calm and protect the person from injury. Never restrain them or put anything in their mouth. And seek emergency help if the seizure lasts 5 minutes or longer.
Thank you, Shamela. Time now for the top stories from around the world. In the region, lawyers for Guyana opposition leader Azruddin Mohammed and his father Nazar Shel Mohammed are asking CCJ President Justice Winston Anderson to step aside from their case over alleged bias. Now the lawyers say their clients may not have received a fair hearing. The CCJ recently dismissed their appeal, clearing the way for U.S.-requested extradition proceedings. Justice Anderson denies any impropriety. The hearing is expected to resume next month. And on the international scene, U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday delayed the 50% tariffs he had threatened to impose on Canadian goods. The tariffs, which were set to take effect Wednesday, would have applied to about $20 billion worth of imports. Trump said the 3-day pause follows a new trade agreement between the United States and Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said progress had been made, but stressed that more work remains. And those were the top regional and international stories. Now we head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your Midday Sports Report with Renata Brown.